Hey there, all you magnificent musical maniacs! Welcome back to Broadway by Ghostlight. I'm Mark Bonanni, and this is episode 57 of Broadway Jeopardy. If you love theater, show tunes, and showing off how much you know, then hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. I've got 26 all-new clues ready to test your Broadway brains, so let's leap right into this week's game. This is Broadway Jeopardy! Taking a peek at this week's categories, we start off as always with last week's Final Jeopardy category, which is The British Are Coming, looking at some shows that played Broadway after first playing London. After that, we have What's in a Last Name. In this category, you'll have to know some last names of musical theater characters. Then it's the Marquee Theater. Yesterday, July 9th, was the 39th birthday of the newer theater, so this week we'll look at some productions that have played that Broadway house. That's followed by Cartoon Logos, a returning visual category where I'll show you a drawn figure or two from a show's official artwork and you name the musical it's from. And last but not least, we have Some Kind of Wonderful, looking at show tunes with the word wonderful in the title. And we end with the Final Jeopardy category, so keep track of your scores if you want to play along, so you can wager some or all of your imaginary earnings on that final clue. We start off, of course, with the $200 round, or the Overture round as I call it, where the questions are fairly easy to help you rack up some fake dough before I snatch it from you with the harder questions later in the game. Get ready because the British are coming! And with them they have the first $200 clue, which is... In this Andrew Lloyd Webber musical about Rusty, an obsolete steam engine train, you'll find the entire cast wearing roller skates. What is Starlight Express? Starlight Express came about because of two separate train-related animated projects that Andrew Lloyd Webber was involved with. The first was an animated musical series based on the stories of Thomas the Tank Engine. A pilot episode was made in 1976, but the series was not picked up, and sadly that pilot episode is now considered lost media. A couple of years later, Lloyd Webber was approached about writing the music for an animated movie adapting the Cinderella story, but using trains. In the proposed film, the prince holds a competition to decide which engine would pull the royal train across the United States of America. Cinderella would be a steam engine, and the Ugly Stepsisters would be a diesel engine and an electric engine. Ultimately, the project was scrapped, but a seed of a musical about trains stuck with Webber, resulting in Starlight Express. Moving on to the What's in a Last Name category, your next $200 clue is... This is the last name of daughter of Delta Nu, Elle, in Legally Blonde. What is Woods? Elle Woods, the feminist icon who on Broadway was originated by Laura Bell Bundy, was based on Amanda Brown, the writer who created the original novel the famous film and subsequent musical was based on. Miss Brown attended Stanford Law School and would write down her experiences of being a blonde in law school using a pink fluffy pen. Heading over to the Marquee Theater category brings us the $200 clue. This Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice musical was revived at the Marquee Theater in 2012, starring Ricky Martin as Che and Elena Rogers in the title role. What is Evita? The first ever Broadway revival of Evita, as the clue stated, opened at the Marquee Theater in 2012, starring Elena Rogers, Michael Cerveris, and Ricky Martin. Though this production is so far the only revival of Evita to come to Broadway, I'm fairly certain we'll be seeing the current West End revival starring Rachel Ziegler and directed by Jamie Lloyd on Broadway probably very soon. Name the musical being featured in the Cartoon Logos category with the $200 visual clue. What is The Music Man? The original artwork for The Music Man was done by David Klein, who did the art for several Broadway shows during the Golden Age, including the original Death of a Salesman and The Most Happy Fella. David Klein is also known for his iconic work for TWA Airlines. In finishing up the Overture round in the Some Kind of Wonderful category, your final $200 clue is... I'm in love with a wonderful guy, sings Nellie Forbush in this Rodgers and Hammerstein musical. What is South Pacific? The classic show tune was first introduced, of course, by South Pacific's original leading lady, Mary Martin. The song was not only tailored to Miss Martin, but also inspired by her and her warm exuberance. The number, as you might imagine, has been featured in lots of different media over the years, but I must admit I was fairly surprised to learn that the song has been featured in the post-apocalyptic action games Fallout 3 and Fallout 4, which makes for some interesting visuals, let's say.
I'm as corny as Kansas in August. I'm as normal as blueberry pie. No more a smart little girl with no heart. I have found me a wonderful guy.
I hope you all skated by that first round. Let's move on to the only slightly harder $400 round now. Circling back to The British Are Coming, your first $400 clue is: the title character of this popular musical is a precocious young girl who acts just a bit naughty when she discovers she has magical powers. What is Matilda? The four original young ladies who alternated the title role in Matilda in the West End were joint winners of Best Actress in a Musical at the Olivier Awards, similar to what the Tony Awards did with the three young men who played Billy Elliot on Broadway. Among the original Matildas in the West End was Carrie Ingram, the only actress to continue the role from the musical's first tryout in Stratford-upon-Avon. She's perhaps most recognizable for her portrayal as Shireen Baratheon in Game of Thrones.
Nobody else is gonna put it right for me. Nobody but me is gonna change my story. Sometimes you have to be a little bit naughty.
Let's check some IDs in the What's in a Last Name category with the $400 clue. The delightfully devious Desiree in Sondheim's A Little Night Music has this last name. What is Armfeldt? Desiree Armfeldt, the glamorous, if fading star of the stage, has been played by many wonderful actresses over the years. She was originated by Glynis Johns, maybe best remembered today as Winifred Banks from Mary Poppins. Gene Simmons played the role in the London production, and in various West End and Broadway revivals we've had Dame Judi Dench, Catherine Zeta-Jones, and Hannah Waddingham all asking for those darn clowns to be sent in. The $400 clue in the Marquee Theater category is: the man in the chair takes us on a musical journey when he listens to this fictional 1920s musical comedy. What is The Drowsy Chaperone? The Drowsy Chaperone might just be the only musical to have originated at a bachelor party. Bob Martin was getting ready to marry his fiancée, Janet Vandergraff, in 1997 in Toronto, Canada, and a group of his fellow friends and performers got together and created a spoof of 1920s musicals about a girl named Janet Vandergraff getting married to Robert Martin and performed it at the stag party. The evening was such a hit with the group, they decided to flesh it out into a full musical, with Bob Martin now on board as fellow book writer, and he created the role of the man in the chair to serve as the sort of narrator for the show. Looking at another cartoon logo, your next $400 visual clue is: what is Little Shop of Horrors? The artwork for the original off-Broadway production of Little Shop of Horrors was by David Byrd, a legendary poster artist I know I've mentioned in the past, who was also known for his work on shows like Godspell and Follies. And your final $400 clue in the Some Kind of Wonderful category is: in Wicked, this character asserts that they are wonderful simply because the citizens of Oz believe it to be true. Who is the Wizard? I won't speak too much about this number and the Wizard, as Wicked for Good, aka Wicked Act 2, has yet to come out in theaters, and I wouldn't want to spoil anything for those of you that haven't had the chance to see the stage show yet. Side note, I find the title change for the sequel very weird. I mean, For Good makes sense, and I do like it, but I hate the fact that the movies are supposedly going to be titled Wicked Part 1 and Wicked for Good. It just bothers me. I like symmetry.
Something is very wrong. I didn't get my way. I need to lie down.
Flying right into the $600 round now, back again at the British Are Coming. The $600 clue there is: based on the classic Stephen King novel, this musical somehow made it across the pond, becoming a flop of legendary proportions. What is Carrie? The role of Margaret White, Carrie's abusive mother, was originally played by the great Barbara Cook in the musical Stratford-upon-Avon tryout. Miss Cook knew the show was in big trouble, but during the musical's disastrous opening night, a set piece malfunctioned and fell early, only a few inches away from decapitating the theater legend on stage. Miss Cook officially resigned from the show after that. Probably a smart move. For the musical's short Broadway bow, Betty Buckley, who had appeared in the famous 1976 film version of Carrie as the gym teacher, took on the role of Mrs. White. The $600 clue in the What's in a Last Name category is, in Annie, this is the last name of Grace, Oliver Warbucks' secretary and sort of love interest. What is Farrell? The character of Grace Farrell was created for the musical and not in the original Annie comic strips, as far as I can tell. In fact, in the comic strips, Oliver Warbucks is married already to Mrs. Warbucks, whose name we never learned. It was Mrs. Warbucks' idea to take in Annie originally, but she did eventually grow tired of the energetic orphan, and when Daddy Warbucks was away on a business trip, even tried to return her to the orphanage. Don't worry, they killed off Mrs. Warbucks in a yachting accident later on. Warbucks does get married again later in the comic, though it's to a woman named Trixie Tinkle, who also went missing and is presumed dead. What's going on there in the Warbucks household?
Leaping lizards!
Anybody else?
Bulldozing several theaters to make way for the marquee theater category and the $600 clue. A woman pretends to be a man who pretends to be a woman is the central plot to this musical starring Julie Andrews. What is Victor Victoria is the right response. Based, of course, on the comedy film starring Julie Andrews and directed by her husband Blake Edwards, the stage adaptation of the show was Julie Andrews' return to the Broadway stage since starring in Lerner and Loewe's Camelot over 30 years prior. Miss Andrews was immensely proud of Victor Victoria, and when she received the only nomination for the show at the Tony Awards, she felt so strongly that the company and creatives were egregiously overlooked that she publicly declined her Tony nomination.
I have searched my conscience and my heart, and I find that, sadly, I cannot accept this nomination, and I prefer instead to stand with the egregiously overlooked.
Your next visual clue in the cartoon logos category for $600 is... What is Grease? These two greasers in the original artwork were by an artist named Glover Buck, who I could find no information about. If anyone out there knows anything about Glover Buck, please let me know. These lovebirds seem to be drawn somewhat in the style of Al Hirschfeld, and if you look closely at the girl's hair, she's got a cheeky little treble clef in there. I love it. And hopefully finding some kind of wonderful with the final $600 clue, we have... The song "Swonderful" by these brilliant brothers has appeared in several Broadway shows, including Nice Work If You Can Get It, My One and Only, and An American in Paris. Who are George and Ira Gershwin? As is the case with a lot of high-profile early songwriters whose beloved music has greatly outlasted the musicals they originated from, songs by the Gershwins have been interpolated into several musicals throughout the years. Swonderful was first introduced in the 1927 musical Funny Face, which starred Fred and Adele Astaire. Fred Astaire later starred in the film musical Funny Face, which, besides the title and 4 of the songs from the musical, the film Funny Face and the stage musical Funny Face have nothing in common with each other.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Marvelous. Marvelous.
Alright, it's time to turn the difficulty level up a notch or two with the $800 round now, but before we do, if you're enjoying this week's game, please, oh pretty please, take this second and hit that little like button for me. It really helps with these videos getting shown to more fine folks like yourselves, but also makes me feel some kind of wonderful. Thanks everyone, I truly do appreciate it. Okay, on to the $800 round we go. Get out your red coats because the British are coming with the $800 clue. The characters of Bertie Wooster and his trusty valet are the subject of this musical based on the stories written by P.G. Wodehouse. What is By Jeeves? Though if you just said Jeeves, that is also acceptable. In 1975, Andrew Lloyd Webber teamed up with playwright Alan Ayckbourn on the musical Jeeves, based on the famous stories by P.G. Wodehouse about English playboy Bertie Wooster and his right-hand man Jeeves. The original production was a disaster. The first performance ran almost 5 hours long, and the subsequent whittling down of the material caused great tension with the creatives, and Jeeves ended up only running a month. Years later, Webber and Ayckbourn revisited the piece, keeping only 3 of the original songs and ditching the original book completely. The musical, now retitled By Jeeves to distinguish, in their eyes, the new musical from the old one, opened in London in 1996, running for a year now, but when the show reached Broadway in 2001, it retained its flop status, running less than 3 months. Looking at a play-turned-musical in the What's in a Last Name category now with the $800 clue. This is the winning last name for the title character of the musical Pearlie, based on the play by Ossie Davis. What is Victorious? Pearlie opened on Broadway in 1970, starring Cleavon Little and Melba Moore. The musical is, as the clue mentioned, based on the play Pearlie Victorious by Ossie Davis. Though Ossie Davis was not involved in the musical's creation at all, so much of his brilliant dialogue was retained that the musical's book writers Peter Udell and Philip Rose felt it was only appropriate to give Ossie Davis co-book writing credit as well. You have the chance to really do a side-by-side comparison of the play and the musical adaptation thanks to 2 different pro shots. The play Pearlie Victorious was filmed during its acclaimed Broadway revival in 2023, starring Leslie Odom Jr. and Carrie Young. And the musical Pearlie was filmed in 1981 for television, starring several cast members from either the original production like Melba Moore, or from the national tour and return engagement of the show, including Sherman Hemsley and Robert Guillaume in the title role. Let's take our seats again at the Marquee Theater category for the $800 clue. This musical, based on the Neil Simon film of the same name, starred Bernadette Peters and Martin Short. What is The Goodbye Girl? On paper, The Goodbye Girl should have been a smash hit. It had a score by Marvin Hamlisch and David Zippel, a book by Neil Simon based on his wonderful film of the same name. Seriously, if you haven't seen The Goodbye Girl, it's great. And starring in the show was Bernadette Peters and Martin Short, who was making his Broadway debut with the musical. And yet, despite all the talent involved, the show just didn't gel. And after meeting tepid reactions from both critics and audiences, the musical closed in 6 months. Looking at some Golden Age cartoon logos now with the $800 visual clue. What is The Pajama Game? The artwork seen here on the original production's poster was by cartoonist Peter Arno. Arno is best remembered for his work for The New Yorker, where he contributed several cartoons and 101 different covers for the magazine from 1925, the first year of The New Yorker, until his death in 1968. And the $800 clue in the Some Kind of Wonderful category is... The seemingly sweet Christine tells conman Freddie that nothing is too wonderful to be true in this 2005 musical based on the film of the same name. What is Dirty Rotten Scoundrels? In the musical comedy, rival conmen Freddie Benson and Lawrence Jameson have a bet to be the first one to get $50,000 from a woman, with the loser having to leave town for good. The mark turns out to be Christine Colgate, an American on vacation in the Riviera. Freddie poses as a veteran who's lost his ability to walk due to something he calls dance fever, which he contracted after witnessing his fiancée cheat on him with a dancer. He makes up a fake doctor, the only man that can help him in his situation, but the cost is, you guessed it, $50,000. It's a fun musical, but the original 1988 film starring Michael Caine and Steve Martin is incredible and very, very near and dear to my heart. I've seen it probably, I don't know, at least 300 times in my life. Go watch it if you haven't seen it and tell me in the comments what you thought. We've reached that point, my friends. The big show, the main event. It's the $1,000 round. Play that dramatic music. Best of luck, players. Circling back one last time to the British Are Coming category brings us the $1,000 clue. This 1963 musical, based on the novel Kips by H.G. Wells, was originally created as a vehicle for British pop star Tommy Steele. What is half a sixpence? Tommy Steele is considered England's first teen idol rock star, and in the 1960s, Steele wanted to branch out into other forms of art and entertainment, and so half a sixpence was created as a vehicle for him. And a vehicle it was, with Steele performing in 12 of the show's 15 songs. Tommy Steele took the show to Broadway in 1965 and appeared in the 1967 film version of the Rags to Riches to Rags story.
But when I'm with you, 1 and 1 make 2, and likewise 2 half sixpences joined together make 1.
Oh, Art.
The $1,000 clue in the What's in a Last Name category is... The recent musical Dead Outlaw told the strange but true tale of Elmer, a bumbling bandit turned post-mortem sideshow attraction with this last name. What is McCurdy? Oh, Dead Outlaw, I am so sad that this show has closed. It deserved so much better. I was super lucky to have seen the show 3 times. I loved it. As the clue mentioned, Dead Outlaw is the true story of Elmer McCurdy, born in 1880, killed in 1911, and buried in 1977. It's a weird, wonderful show with great music and a fascinating story.
Your mama's dead, your daddy's dead, they're all just dead, and so are you, and so are you. Oh!
Our last trip to the Marquee Theater gives us the $1,000 clue. This short-lived musical about a real-life convicted killer had a score by Paul Simon. What is The Cape Man? The Cape Man opened at the Marquee Theater in 1998 to controversy and complications. The musical is based on the life of Salvador Agron, a gang member who in 1958, at the age of 16, murdered 2 teenage boys he mistook for rival gang members. Agron wore a black cape with red lining while committing the murders, leading the press to dub him the Cape Man. Legendary singer-songwriter Paul Simon had been working on a musical about Agron since 1988, and when the show was finally materializing 10 years later, Simon wanted complete and total control over the property, a position not normally held by the music writer, more traditionally held by the director, who for this musical was the very last member of the creative team hired. And even then, the musical would go through 4 directors in its short life. There were several more problems that plagued the Cape Man, including Paul Simon's open disdain for Broadway, which, people in the industry weren't thrilled about, as well as having the still living family members of the real life victims of the murder publicly opposing the musical. Though the score did have some fans, the musical received pretty terrible reviews and ultimately closed after 4 months, including previews. Looking at a short-lived show in the cartoon logos category brings us the $1,000 visual clue. What is Big Deal? Bob Fosse's musical Big Deal opened on Broadway in 1986. Based on the film Big Deal on Madonna Street, Bob Fosse not only directed and choreographed the show, but wrote the book for the musical as well. Big Deal is considered a jukebox musical with the score made up of pre-existing songs from the 1920s and 30s. Though some of Fosse's numbers were praised, the musical received generally poor reviews and closed after about 2 months, and would sadly be Bob Fosse's final new musical to reach Broadway. The wonderful art for Big Deal was by artist Pete Georgeson. And the curtain call clue in the Some Kind of Wonderful category for $1,000 is... One Wonderful Day is the Act 1 closer to this Stephen Sondheim musical, which was supposed to be the first musical of Sondheim's to reach Broadway. What is Saturday Night? Yes, in the summer of 1955, the first professional full-length musical by Stephen Sondheim was getting ready to open on Broadway. An announcement was made in the New York Times and auditions were being held for a fall bow. But sadly, in August of 1955, the musical's lead producer, the legendary Lemuel Ayres, died of cancer at the age of 40. After his death, with money scarce and morale low, the project was shelved, and Sondheim would have to wait another 2 years until he would make his Broadway debut with West Side Story, though only as a lyricist. The musical Saturday Night wouldn't be seen in full until 1997 in London, and wouldn't reach New York until 2000 in an off-Broadway production. And with that, we've reached the final Jeopardy round, y'all! Time to tally up those scores and decide how much you want to wager in the category one-woman shows. As it sounds, we're looking at some one-woman evenings that have played Broadway. Okay, has everyone made their wagers? Meredith? Mark? Ben? Rain? Okay, here is your final clue. This beloved Broadway turned sitcom star brought her one-woman show called Just Between Friends to Broadway in 2002. Who is B. Arthur is the right response. B. Arthur, of course, is best known today for playing Dorothy Zbornak on The Golden Girls and Maude Finley on Maude. But deep down, B. Arthur was always a Broadway baby. B. Arthur was the original Yenta the Matchmaker in Fiddler on the Roof and the original Vera Charles in Mame, just to name a few of her theatrical credits. She finally returned to the stage with Just Between Friends, a one-woman show with songs and anecdotes from her long career on stage and screen. The production toured 26 cities before landing on Broadway at the Booth Theater on January 29th, 2002. And that's this week's game! How did you all fare this week? Are you changing your last name to Champion? Or was your final score none kind of wonderful? Be sure to let me know in the comments. I absolutely love hearing how you guys did and seeing your scores. If you want to help support the channel and keep Broadway Jeopardy coming, there's a few great ways to help. The easiest way is to simply share these videos with anyone and everyone you can think of. I would really love to hit 10,000 subscribers by the end of this year, and I think we could do it, but I'm gonna need your help. The most direct way you can help support the channel is through Patreon. These fine people have signed up to help support me and the channel and are literally the only reason why I can keep making these videos on a regular basis. Thank you so much to every one of my beautiful patrons. I love you guys. If you want to check out my Patreon, you can use the link in the video description, where there's also a link to my merch shop, another great way to support the channel and pick up some fun theater-related goodies. If you want to connect outside of the YouTube verse, you can find me over on Blue Sky and Instagram. I'll be back next week with episode 58. That's crazy. But until then, I'm Mark Bonanni. This is Broadway by Ghostlight. Thanks for playing.
Leaping Legends!